Please drink while we do this. Yeah.
Is there any way to better start a Florida State podcast? Please drink while we do this.
It's perhaps even mandatory. Ingram, Smith, Bud Elliott, our old friend Mark Ennis here to preview the Louisville game. I think it's been 4 years in a row where Mark is the only guest that we've brought in now. And we've brought in Mark for maybe 8 years now. That's all sounding like old men here having this conversation. But as always, we'll thank our sponsors off the bat. Louisiana hot sauce, 3 simple ingredients, 1 fantastic product. Title sponsor of the Nolecast for 6 years now. And the good people at Tarpon Cellars Wine. You can go to tarponcellars.com, use coupon code Nolecast, 20% off. And with that, let's jump into a preview here, gentlemen. So 0-3, very well may turn to 0-4 come Saturday, but we'll try to give you as good of an idea as to what that'll look like, what to expect. And if you see certain amount of things in the first 10 minutes or so, have a pretty good feeling that the game may go in one direction or another.
All right. So, Mark, for new listeners, the reason we have you on, not only because you're an awesome guy and because we always enjoy having you on, but you do cover Louisville and you're in the Louisville market for ESPN 680, I believe it is.
And 93.9, yeah, AM and an FM station. Yep.
And the FM station. We always see Mark at AC Media Day, and he's actually a Florida native. Somebody we keep in pretty close contact with. All right, so opening night probably couldn't have gone any worse, I would say, for Louisville. They had several targeting ejections and then ended up it just couldn't get the run game going at all. Defense kind of played hard for a while and then just, gave it up, I guess, and they ended up losing to Ole Miss. What was the final in that one?
43-24.
Yeah. After that game, what are you thinking?
I think it's going to be a long year. In particular, with one data point, it was really hard to subtract out what was specific to Ole Miss. It was hard to say, like, what's Ole Miss, what's Louisville. And so for 1 week, it was just all Louisville. And I went into that game slightly having been talked into at least being competitive because of the bowl game that Ole Miss played without Elijah Moore. I was thinking this might be an offense, an Ole Miss offense. It's a little easier to keep the top on. And they were pretty pedestrian without him. 26-20, I think, was the bowl game final against Indiana. And I'm an idiot for thinking that bowl games teach you a lot. And so that was foolish on my part. But 2 weeks subsequently to that, I feel better than I did. They had 569 yards or something close to that against Louisville. It's 760 against Tulane, for God's sake. It turns out Ole Miss is a machine. But I think the most depressing thing for Louisville fans was they had told us, and you guys know what this is like. We got 7, 8, 9 guys on the offensive line. We feel good about these guys. We're going to be able to do some things, and they didn't do anything in the first half. And it was getting whipped up front, being kind of passive and predictable play calling wise. Now in the second half, they scored 24 points. They put some yards up. They changed up just kind of the overall demeanor of the offense. Cunningham a little more in the shotgun, relied on him a little more as a runner. It opened up some other things. And since then, they've been all right offensively. But coming out of Ole Miss, it was depressing because the things they said they'd be good at, they weren't. Now I know at least a good chunk of that's because Ole Miss is probably going to be like a 9 or a 10 win team, even without even being all that great on defense. But it's been a little more encouragement. After Ole Miss, it was bleak, man. It was really bleak.
You mentioned using Cunningham more as a runner. Is that something you think that they just didn't want to have to do as much this year? Or is it just they wanted to ease him into it? Why do you think they brought that on later?
I think there's 2 parts to that. One, I think they wanted to be super ball control against Ole Miss because it kind of worked for Arkansas, a year ago. It's what Scott loves to do anyway. I vividly remember him before when Louisville hired him one-on-one or just chit-chatting with him. He's like, yeah, when we played Tennessee at App State, when we played at Penn State when I was at App State, he's like, one of the ways we used to really frustrate these guys is just make them bored. We just have the ball forever. Even if we didn't get points, we just have the ball forever. And I think he was thinking they could be able to do that a little bit against Ole Miss. So that's part of it. But also, if anything happens to him, they're screwed. They don't have a backup that's worth anything. Florida State has 4 quarterbacks, and they might not have any, but Louisville has 1, and they might not have any. If anything happens to Cunningham, they're deep trouble. So I think that they reluctantly run him anyway. just out of fear of whatever happens to him, because Conley is not nearly as mobile, not nearly as good of a deep ball thrower. And then after Conley, it's one of us. So I think those two things.
I think Florida State's offensive line coach may actually be texting students right now just to see what they have out there and if anybody's taking snaps. So one of us may be listed on Florida State's depth chart come Saturday morning at the tackle position or even the interior. So it's a crazy year, Mark, obviously for Florida State to come off the high that was, the Sunday night game against Notre Dame, and you feel as though the program's taken some significant steps and buy-in, kids, refusing to quit and fighting back. And then, one of the more significant whiplash moments that I've personally experienced in sports, where 6 days later you lose on a really indescribably stupid play to end the game to an FCS team at the end of the game. And then at that point, you're almost in shock.
Came home from the Eastern Kentucky game, where Louisville just kind of sleepwalked through the game. They did the minimum. You know what those games are like. Well,
as you should in week 2. You just don't need to lose on the last play of the game. Yeah.
Exactly. Came home, and I knew that they were going to play 3 games in 12 days. And my mom was in town for my son's birthday, and I ran in and I put my phone down, but I had the Florida State game on my phone just because I noticed, like, this is not a blowout. This might be weird. But my kids kept getting up out of bed, so I was putting them back in the bed a bunch of times, and all of a sudden I hear my phone get real loud from the other room. And I was like, holy crap, did they really just give that up? And I didn't realize. I just heard noise. I was like, maybe they gave up a score. I didn't realize it was the last play of the game. Yikes.
Yeah. So you get that whiplash, and then maybe a little bit more of a dose of reality last week with what happened with Wake, and just the real understanding that you're so banged up along the offensive line that you're staring a 1-2. I mean, I legitimately think best case scenario is that you win 3 games this year for Florida State. And I know coming out of the gate saying that in the first 5 minutes is going to make this podcast even more popular than it is, but it's just the reality of the situation. So it will be interesting to see.
People love murder podcasts. It's fine.
Yeah, well, this will be this could be real true crime when it comes to what happens with Florida State football.
Look, Florida State was picked ahead of Louisville. They were picked 4th, I think, ACC media days in the Atlantic. Did you buy that? Did you agree with that? Did you disagree with that? Did you object to that? Like, where were you guys relative to what other people were thinking? I thought they were going to be better, but I didn't know how much better.
We thought between 4 and 7 wins, which is a big range, but like coming off a year.
Place. I'm not
right.
Yes,
I mean, like I thought, okay, they will be ahead of Syracuse.
Yes.
I think they will absolutely be behind Boston or NC State and obviously Clemson, and then kind of anywhere else in there. But I guess if you had told me, like, hey, they said they have 7 offensive linemen they like, and 4 are going to miss the majority of the early part of the season, I'd have been like, well, shoot, what ACC game are they going to win? Like,
yeah,
Syracuse is not a lock at that point, and it's not now. But no, we were on the more negative side, I would say, like we usually are, which in the last 5 years has been the more accurate side of things. To be like, I think 5 or 6 wins is probably, like a bowl game's a big achievement. Some of the other podcasts out there were like, will 8 wins be enough? Like, what? Yeah, like in his first 2 years combined, yeah, sure. It'll be enough. But then they kind of slowly came back down to earth, I think, after they got to watch fall camp. So no, we were pretty consistently, 5 or 6, 4 or 7, kind of more the outlier things there. But it's just come off the rails early.
What you're talking about, like this is the hardest job of the ACC and the Atlantic. Outside of Clemson, every game is like 60-40, 40-60, or some range in between. No one is god-awful. Syracuse is close, but no one's god-awful, and no one's great except for Clemson. And it's some version of a marginal game that will be determined by things that you'll only know that day, which makes this prediction game miserable. Louisville outgained 9 opponents last year, and they went 4-7.
Which made him a decent bounce-back candidate. Like, if you look at what Florida State did against Wake, right, and I actually disagree with the numbers here a little bit. I don't think FSU deserved to win that game. But, like, the pure numbers give him a 58% post-game win expectancy, like in Bill Connolly's stuff. I mean, seriously. because they outgained Wake Forest on a per play basis, and they literally had 6 turnovers in the game, which is not sustainable. Like we know turnovers have a pretty heavy luck component, and some of those turnovers were pretty detrimental. Now, what I saw is that Wake kind of shut it down in the final 20 minutes, and if they needed to score more, I think they could have, right? Like to me, that's not really reflective. But also, I don't know that the game played out as far as moving the ball and stopping the opponent from moving the ball to them losing, by 21 points, right? Although I don't really see a way they would have won the game without a lot of turnover luck in their favor.
You know what sticks out to me about that game is that it used to be, and I don't really know, maybe it stopped like this year, last year. Like if Wake beat Florida State, like it was a big damn deal.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like a big damn deal to anybody. Like Wake didn't have crazy, we're doing it body language. The crowd didn't look like we're doing it, big damn deal. And this is not trolling at all. You guys know me.
Yeah.
Louisville's in the shadow of 2-10. Like I'm not doing this, but it was weird that it didn't have that feel for maybe the first time literally in my life. 1995, I went to Orlando with my girlfriend at the time, Brooke Young. Hi, Brooke. How are you doing? We went to Orlando back when ACC teams used to sell Florida State their home games. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they played a Duke one there in Jacksonville.
No, it was Orlando. I went to that game.
Oh, excuse me.
When they Dan Kendrick, they used to bring in a whole second 11 team to come in and play. Remember that? Like in my life.
Is this the game where Peter Warwick breaks like 11 Duke tackles? Because I think maybe they went back and did it again.
No, it was 95. It was way before.
Well, 90, yeah, because 96 would have been his freshman year. There's a
But it was like I have memories of Florida State being impenetrable and hanging with them. When I was in 8th grade and they suffered their first ever ACC loss ever, I was at Burger King on Florida Avenue in my Adams Middle School football pants and a T-shirt, watching that game on a TV in Burger King, watching them lose that game. And it was like they thought Virginia was going to have a parade. And so like I've got super long context for this. I don't understand Florida State as they are right now. It's hard. College football's changed so much. I don't understand Miami looking like Michigan State coming down. I don't know if either of you saw this. Andrew Adelson was tweeting out some of the quotes. Like 2/3 of Miami's broken tackles against Michigan State happened in the 4th quarter against Michigan State. Like, how is that possible that Michigan State's
for a northern team?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So many things are happening that are just so different than they used to be. And it doesn't make sense to me at all.
The one, we mentioned Alex Atkins, the offensive line coach who was the run game coordinator at Charlotte. He's really clicking with these recruits, offensive line wise, and like he's a guy they really like. I don't think they're that far away. Like they're not like 5 years away from being like good on the offensive line. This year's injuries, I think, is going to mask some of the likely progress that's actually being made, and then I expect him to take a pretty decent jump in about 2 years. He's got 6 guys committed right now on the offensive line, plus potential for a 7th. Now they may lose one, but like pretty nice offensive line class he's bringing in. Obviously they have Travis Hunter. This staff, one of the things that they did that Willie's staff did not do well is they messaged expectations to recruits. Like I don't know any recruit who this staff went out and said, "Hey, we're going to kick ass this year." Right? Like I think their message was, we're proven developers of talent at Memphis. We just got these guys because last year with the COVID, restrictions, like we weren't able to really work with them. We don't like this roster. We brought in 12 transfers this year for a reason, because this roster sucks. You guys, there is a ton of early playing time we're going to sell, and we're selling it to you.
Yeah, I always think about the story about when Urban Meyer at Florida 2005, they got destroyed at Alabama. And the story that he texted Tim Tebow from the tunnel. If we were any good, we wouldn't need you. I get, like, I'm sure that there's a lot of that going. I think Norvell's a really good coach. I think Florida State I just think it's hard for people like me from the outside to totally make sense of the fact that Florida State has gotten here.
Yeah, the other issue is, as you know, in the early signing period, that first class that you sign is likely to be terrible. You're probably going to get a lot of those guys for a reason and not a bad reason. And look, they have this roster is made up half of early signing period classes right now, 18 and 20. Yeah. And Norvell's 20 class sucks, and Willie's 18 class sucks.
Scott's first class was crap.
It's bad. Like, if I was a new coach now, I think I would just go all transfer, pretty much, because like these high school kids you get are washouts. They don't last. Norvell's going to suffer the same fate Willie did as far as that first class. Like, they're not going to get much out of it. People don't want to hear this because there's still guys on this roster, but they're not going to work out. We see this everywhere. There's a reason you're able to get these kids. So if you have this is why I think it's not real bright, although I totally understand why they did it, the behind the scenes stuff. But if you do it, if you fire a coach after 19 games, you're going to commit to a long-term rebuild roster wise. And they have. Yeah. That's kind of the best. Like, you work in college football, you get that. Like, all right. So let's say FSU doesn't turn the ball over 6 times. That would be an interesting start. And maybe they get one of these offensive linemen to play to where they only have like one, non-ACC level replacement player along the offensive line. If they force Louisville to throw the football and they get into passing downs, how equipped is Louisville to do that without, guys like Atwell and what's his name who they lost from last year?
Yeah, I think just generally speaking, if Florida State doesn't turn the ball over at all, or if it's even,
like not 6,
right? Yeah, if it's fairly even, if it's within sort of one standard deviation EVA in terms of a turnover margin, it's going to look like Louisville's game against UCF. Like that game had no turnovers until literally the last 2 plays of the game. Where Louisville had the crazy interception, and then UCF threw the pick 6. I think Louisville does not have, and I've said this to another FSU podcast earlier, there is no Tutu Atwell on this roster. There is no guy that just knifes through cover 2 and is wide open, and it's ridiculous. Like, there is no Tutu. It turns out was a lot more special than any of us realized. But I think what you've got is a lot of guys who are pretty good, but there's just no one guy that's just like that burner that blows up coverages like Tutu was. Louisville's going to have to manufacture a whole lot. And I mean that in terms of the effort that it takes. Now, nicely against UCF, what I thought they did, and I don't know if this was just a matter of scouting or whatever it was, but, UCF, really nice defensive line. But linebackers, in terms of sort of covering horizontally, not that good. And Louisville really got them with backs out of the backfield, tight ends in the flat, things like that. That stuff was there way more. And it was the first time really they sort of emphasized that sort of thing in the passing game really all year. But there's no guy down the field that just sort of takes the top off like they've had in the past since Scott's been here.
Yeah. Well, what you did just say there is scaring me already. I mean, Florida State's linebackers are very, very poor, unfortunately. And what
in pass coverage?
And being too aggressive in the run and creating cutback lanes. And I mean, what y'all's offense does is plays to our weaknesses pretty significantly, I think, with the stretch stuff. I also think that Florida State's defensive line is very good. Obviously, there's a fall off as you work your way down the depth chart. And with what, some of the pressure that y'all's offense puts on linemen, probably need a little bit more frequent substitutions in this game. And I have a lot of concerns in general with where Florida State is offensively, but particularly concerned with what Louisville's offense does and how it kind of pits itself against some of the weaknesses that exist in Florida State's team. So,
Mark, are they?
I think Louisville. The nice thing that they did in the UCF game. Look, Scott's first year here, they had Mekhi Becton, who is a minivan. And they would just sort of run Javian Hawkins, who's extremely good, behind him, and then run all of this misdirection stuff. Pop passes, play action off of him to Tutu Atwell and Des Fitzpatrick. And it was just enough to have like a core of a thing that worked. They don't have any of that this year, but Scott seems to have been at least resourceful enough to realize we can use Malik Cunningham as kind of a running option, wear teams down a little bit, take advantage of that. Jalen Mitchell's a really powerful running back. He's a really strong kid, can run the ball well. He's not going to break any long runs at all. Marshawn Ford's a nice tight end in kind of a confined area, but there's just none of that breakaway stuff and none of that overpowering stuff. But they will still sort of test you, like you were saying. So the discipline, you take one wrong step, the double pass, things like that, that stuff's still there. It's just not as deadly whole field as it was the first 2 years.
Just wait, Mark. Just wait.
I remember last year. Hey, I remember last year when you guys came up here when Florida State. I hate to say that, you guys. When Florida State came up here, someone, one of the, I follow maybe a dozen or more Florida State fans that tweeted me. They're like, "I thought you said this offense wasn't any good," and I remember that tweet. I was like, "You fixed it." Last year.
Yeah. One thing that I know you absolutely love about Scott is that they like to run the ball a lot on 2nd and 10 after an incomplete on first. Like this year, it seems they're throwing the ball more on early downs a little bit, which is good. But then they follow up the completion with a run, which we know is kind of negative EV and sets you up to have like a passing down.
I saw somebody was busting Don Zimmer's balls about that today. Not Don Zimmer. God, Mike Zimmer. Don Zimmer.
Is Don Zimmer alive? There's no way. He was old when I was a kid.
All I remember is
him falling.
Yeah. They were asking Mike Zimmer about that today. He was just like, "Look, Dalvin Cook's our best player. We're gonna give him the ball."
So is he pairing this approach though with like an Army type style where they go for it a lot on 4th down?
Against UCF, definitely. Yeah. So like they went for it on 4th down a couple times. They faked a punt. Basically like this, they did the exact same thing against Ole Miss that they did against UCF. It just worked a little better against UCF. But like 3rd and 11, they had a quarterback draw. They got a first down. It ended up being a 94-yard touchdown drive. They are more willing to go for it on 4th down and that sort of thing. I think what happened is the Eastern Kentucky game, that middle game, 14 times, 2nd and 6 or more, they ran it 11 times. And I asked them at the Monday press conference, I'm like, why? Why are you doing that when literally nobody else thinks that's the right thing to do? And he basically was just like, we got to get good at it. He said, we got to get good at it. And I think we can kind of muscle Eastern Kentucky up, which they couldn't. But the following week against UCF on Friday, they threw it on 1st down way more. They ran it on 2nd and long far fewer times than they did the week before. I think they were just basically like, hey, we got an overmatched opponent. We can't lose. Let's just try the crap we're not good at. Which I think it's hard for fans to accept that that's what they're doing, but that's what they were doing. And against UCF, they had them way more off balance. So I don't think that that's who they are. But for that game, I was pretty pissed off.
So one thing I'm just kind of going through, some of the game data so far. I want to kind of pick your brain to see if it lines up with what you've seen or if it's just kind of an outlier. Are they really allowing 71% completions?
Yeah, but it's been a lot of like 3rd and 10 or more, against UCF, for instance, I think Dylan Gabriel had a great game percentage wise, but they were 2 of 10 on 3rd down. Like they gave up a whole lot of, there was 3rd and 22 when they lined up by Benetti on the broadcast was like, they've got the safeties at the Slugger Museum, they're fine with that. They stayed ahead of the chains in that game and defended pretty well. So the percentage hasn't been great, but they've also played Ole Miss and UCF.
Right.
Dylan Gabriel and Matt Corral are freaking good. That's where one of those, I think, like the opponent's numbers are kind of cooked into that. And they've stayed ahead of the chains. They're fine with the guy converting or completing a 3rd and 22 pass for 9 yards or a 3rd and 7 pass for 3 yards. A lot of times I watched the SB Nation's UCF guy, and forgive me for not remembering his name. But there were 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, and Louisville would just let Dylan Gabriel kind of scan, dump it off in the flat, and they're like, why are we throwing it short? Well, that's what was open. So like the percentage hasn't been great, but Louisville's 3rd down defense was really good in that game. And I think that's what they're kind of hoping for.
I'm looking for other ways this thing could be interesting. Louisville's run.
What's the strength of your defense?
Yeah.
Secondary.
Okay.
So,
you feel comfortable about your linebackers?
Yeah. I mean, I thought linebackers as mobile. So I think that the inside linebackers, Monty Montgomery, CJ Avery, had a really nice game against UCF in particular. And Ole Miss, like once Monty Montgomery got ejected for targeting in that game, that's when Ole Miss started to just sort of tear them apart between the hash marks. Like he's very mobile, very active, very good in kind of the middle as like remember James Burgess was here before?
Yeah.
Was really good. that guy that's almost like a super big free safety or a strong safety, like he's like that. And the secondary is really good. Like they, like for me, you guys just laugh at me. I don't care. It's fine. But like when I hear Mackenzie Milton's probably going to play the whole game, I'm like, that's good. Like for Louisville, that's good because I think that they'll try to play as much man as they can, and come after him. Because I think Keyshawn Clark's really good at corner. The two safeties that they brought in that are transfers, and Kendrick Duncan and Quintero Cole had a great game against UCF. I think they'll trust those guys against the FSU's wide receivers.
That's a good idea.
I think you will turn the TV off on Saturday, Mark, and go, I knew their offensive line was bad. I didn't realize it was that bad, and their receivers are even worse than I thought they were going into this game. I mean,
one cautionary thing: 2 years ago when Louisville went down there, everyone like FSU's offensive line was awful, and Louisville didn't sack Florida State once. Now I think Louisville's better, way better up front than they were 2 years ago, but cautionary tale. Like I've heard this song before, where it's like Florida State can't block anybody, and they didn't get to FSU at all. Now it's a different, this is not Willie from 2 years ago or any of that stuff. Like I know it's different, but I've heard this before.
I think there is a bit of like an all hands on deck type thing here, so I wouldn't rule out them finding some way to put up points. Obviously Louisville has faced tempo this year to varying degrees of success, and then sometimes not. At a couple times against Ole Miss, I guess they weren't lined up, but against UCF they handled it pretty well. It seemed like, even though UCF's they go pretty quick now.
They did this totally like douchebag thing against UCF too. Like UCF would sub, and they would wait. Like they'd wait for that sub to run all the way in and then run somebody off and make the ref stand over the ball. Like they did that over and over again. And honestly, I'm going to be dead on. I'm just going to be totally honest with you. I was thrilled because I've been afraid that Scott doesn't have enough of like that in him. The gamesmanship, kind of the a-holy stuff that you kind of got to do. Yeah. And I'd hate it if the other team did it, but I was legitimately encouraged that he kind of had it in him because I've always had him as kind of like an Andy Griffith kind of thing, which is fine. It's a culture thing and all that. But like to see them kind of hang over near the shaded edge of the border, it honestly encouraged me.
Makes sense.
Especially to mess with Gus.
Offensive line wise,
who's super sensitive about anyone doing anything against this poor offense, like stealing signals.
Yeah, that is true. Although he's okay with his own staff doing it in a national title game. Yeah, at least for a half. So, offensive line wise, you feel pretty good.
I feel okay.
Okay.
I don't feel good. Like it's hovers around replacement level. Like against UCF, against Ole Miss, I was disappointed. I thought they really got pushed around. And we'll see if it turns out in time that Ole Miss really kind of upgraded up there. But I thought they got kind of pushed around. And I think Scott was kind of surprised at the degree to which they got pushed around in that game.
That nose guard for Ole Miss ain't bad.
Yeah, I think you're right. In the middle linebacker kind of changed everything for them. Like when they lost the kid that transferred to Kentucky, but that they brought that kid in from Maryland, to play for DJ Durkin, and it did make a very big difference. Against UCF, they really held up. They did, and that's a pretty good defensive line. A bunch of SEC transfers on that line. They did all right. They did okay. And the truth is, they're probably not going to play a whole lot of defensive lines that are a lot better than that. So they're okay. Now they're not. There's no Mekhi Becton. There's not the shadow of Mekhi Becton. There's not Kirkland brand Mekhi Becton. There's no any kind of Mekhi Becton up there. But they're better in terms of variance between the best and the worst player on the line than they've been since he's been here. So they're not one-sided. They're not lopsided or anything like that. And that's good. So like they're okay.
How does Louisville lose this game?
I think they'll have to help. I think that if you get the bad Malik Cunningham, which is either him being kind of jittery or helping in terms of fumbling the football, if there was anything that was just, I would love for you or Bill Connolly or somebody who loves the numbers to dig into. There was something about fumbles, either like on or within proximity to big plays, that just seemed to have extra negative psychological value. And the thing about Malik Cunningham is last year, there'd be like he'd get flushed out of the pocket, and he juked 2 defenders in the backfield, have a 35-yard run, and then fumble at the end of the run. And then Louisville would give up a touchdown in like 3 plays. Like that sort of thing happened over and over and over again a year ago. And right now, Louisville turnover margin, I think there's 0 at this point. They were super negative a year ago. So I think as long as they don't help and sort of give that intangible emotional boost to Florida State, where it's like, we can mess with this guy, he's going to hurt them too. Against UCF, he didn't have any turnovers until that crazy. Like, just give UCF's defensive end great credit. Bat it up in the air and catch it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
He didn't help, and he really hasn't helped anybody like that this year. As long as Louisville doesn't help, I think it'll be exactly like the UCF game. I think it'll just sort of be a how do we do between the 20s kind of game. And as long as the other, like, just unforeseen, unexpected, a kick return, a punt return, special teams sort of things that you don't bake into your analysis typically. And I don't think that Louisville's especially good or bad at any element of special teams. I don't think Florida State is either. As long as there's not like, oh, look at that, they had 195 yards of return yards in this game. That sort of thing. I think it'll be a nail biter right down to the edge. I don't think Louisville's a world beater by any means. And I know you guys are understandably disappointed with where Florida State is, but this is a 50-50 game as long as nobody gives somebody some sort of one of these little side item helpers. I think about the Louisville played Wake Forest 2 years ago, 62-59. Oh God, it was a bonkers game.
62.
Oh, it was nuts. I mean, there were 3 onside kicks, but Louisville got outgained by Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest ended up running close to 100 plays. Louisville was gassed by the end. But Louisville had a kick return for a touchdown for 100 yards. They had a punt return down to like the 5-yard line in that game. And like, as long as there's nothing like that, I think Louisville will win close.
Makes sense. Yeah. Something you said there was you'd much prefer to see Mackenzie Milton.
Yeah. That's
actually something, if you listen to the broadcast on Saturday, it's pretty clear to me that the Wake staff told the broadcast staff the same thing. They thought FSU's offense was much more difficult with Jordan Travis in there. Of course, the last time we seen Jordan Travis do anything with the football was Saturday, when his arm was hanging by his side, not really moving it. That's the last I've heard about him, doing football related stuff. So, we'll have to see, what happened at practice this week, or what happens if he can get out there on Saturday. But obviously, he took a couple nice shots in that game, so I'm a little skeptical of that. But obviously, I think he's got some motivation to play probably against Louisville if he's able to get out there physically and do it. And I do think this is a game that the staff, I think there's some games they realize that they just can't do it. You know what I mean? Like we talk about how this offensive line has real problems, especially if certain guys don't play. But I said on Cover 3 podcast today, if I see Smith and Scott start out there or come out there in that starting lineup, I'm going to get off my Louisville bet. I'm going to go ahead and bet FSU and just net this thing out and let the house eat the juice, because I do think there's a pretty significant drop off there, and if they have those guys in, I think they have a chance to block Louisville, up front. And
Louisville's not overwhelming up front. That's not crazy.
Yeah. And then I think defensively how they win is basically, like, we can agree that Wake Forest receivers are probably pretty superior, I would think, to what Louisville has with Roberson and AT and those guys.
Yeah. I think Louisville's wide receivers right now are pretty pedestrian. There's nobody that takes the top off. They're not awful. But there's just no Tutu Atwell. There's no Des Fitzpatrick. They're coming along. I think there's potential there, but like, we spent the whole preseason being told Tyler Harrell runs like a 4.19. All this. That's great. He can't move. Like, he can't. You press.
He's Tetris.
He's track fast. Yeah. He's when I was a kid, Dennis Gentry. Remember, like, that was like, oh God, Dennis Gentry, like the Bears. Like, yeah, that's great. He ran in the Olympics. That's wonderful. Like, it doesn't mean anything, like that's but no, I think Louisville's wide receivers have a lot to prove. So now they're coming along, but there's just no thing that made you like just petrified like you've had the first 2 years, for sure.
I think about some of the matchups. Like, they'll probably try to double Jermaine Johnson as much as possible. I certainly would.
Or read Jermaine Johnson too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Lovett has been a nice player for them. Like Lovett's going to get himself drafted as a nose guard. Like he's an NFL type prospect, I think. Keir Thomas, I don't think has like an NFL type future, but he's a fairly decent college player.
He's a good fit for what's required with what y'all run. I feel I like that matchup pretty good. Briggs on the inside has turned into a pretty decent player. The defensive line is good. I mean, that much I feel fairly confident about.
UCF has had a nice defensive line. What Louisville made all of its money, made all of its hay, linebackers playing horizontally. They beat them across the field over and over and over again. And I think the game plan will probably look similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, that's so. Wake did a really nice job of passing the football kind of in the middle of the field and exploiting the seams and whatnot. Which I don't know how good Cunningham is at that. Is he comfortable throwing the ball over the middle?
Yes.
Okay,
but not as good as Hartman. It's not like the bread and butter of the offense, but improving. I think that there was a recognition starting after the second half of the Ole Miss game forward. Like that was once they sort of made peace with the fact no one's getting over the top. Then all of a sudden I think there was a little recognition. We better figure this out. It was better against EKU. It was much better against UCF, but it's certainly not. It's just not what Scott loves to do. Scott wants to run outside zone and he wants to run bootleg and he wants to run play action and throw it over the top. And I think he's the one that sort of had to mourn. That's just not what they're going to be very good at this year, at least not early on. And it's certainly, even if Louisville scores points and gets yards, it's not going to look like last year where it was just nobody for Florida State could guard you well. Like that's just not going to happen this year.
Red zone wise, you feel good about their offense in the red zone?
Yeah. I think in the red zone, this is where there's no expectation of space like that. They did whatever they wanted against UCF. They scored in the red zone. Like I think that they can get a couple yards if they have to mash it up against somebody like that. They're good at that. It's just when there's all this space and you want to take the top off and make somebody be uncomfortable guarding all of it. They haven't been able to do that. But in the red zone, like against UCF, they score in the red zone every time. They've been fine.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens early in this game. Sidney Williams, who I think has been FSU's best run-stopping safety. Ingram, you may disagree, but I thought like he's had a pretty nice year coming down, and stopping the run. So he actually caught a targeting at the end of the Wake game. So he'll be out for the first half, which I'm sure Louisville staff knows. But that'll be interesting to see like who plays that role for FSU. Is it Gant? Is it Dent? Is it somebody else? Obviously, the safety play last year, I actually do think it's been improved this year, despite the nonsense. Yeah, it was really bad. Like they exploited the hell out of that in that game last year in Louisville en route to scoring 40-something points, I think it was, or maybe 50
touchdown drives in that game. Is nuts.
Yeah, seriously. That to me is going to be pretty key. FSU, if I'm them, I probably try to play a little bit softer, a little more conservative early on, and then see if you can keep this thing tight, let your defensive line win, tackle the underneath stuff.
That's what Ole Miss did. After the Ole Miss game, the staff and Malik Cunningham both all sort of said, like, we thought, hey, they had a bad rush defense. They would commit 8 guys to the box. They'd run blitz, and things like that. And when we got drop 7, drop 8 on almost every play, and they got a little bit of pressure from it, it took them almost a whole half of the game to adjust. They scored 24 points in the second half, so it was better. But they were shocked that Ole Miss was willing to sort of take their chances. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida State do the same thing, because I think they have a nice front seven, good enough front seven, maybe even a better front seven than UCF. I think UCF has a good defensive line, but I think Florida State's got a better front seven. I wouldn't be surprised to see them try something like that too, and see if Louisville will be patient and sort of take the dink and dunk stuff early if they're not able to sort of move them up front.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and it'll be on the offensive staff to see if they can. I don't know if you watched the last episode we did with the stuff FSU's coaches can't really say. We did their coordinators are called or their names are Adam Fuller and Kenny Dillingham, and we went with Adam Fuller Truth and Kenny Rillingham, and which was a good bit. We may have to bring that back a couple times this year.
I did see lots of angst about Dillingham being like, hey, every time we go out there, teams run all this stuff we've never seen before. and everyone being real mad about that. I'm like, buddy, welcome to the job. Like, this is the job.
He was a little too honest. What we said he couldn't say was, oh my God, our receivers suck so bad that Wake Forest, a team that runs like 8% man free, is now going to run like almost all man free against us because they just know that our receivers are terrible and they don't care.
I think Louisville's going to do that too.
And the thing is, Louisville's not
no reason
a
for anyone
team,
not
right?
to do that. I mean, that's the expectation.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do too. Most likely, how much man have they played this year? They're still more zone, right? Normally.
They tried a ton of man free, a ton, and then they dropped 8 a lot against UCF because they did a good job staying ahead of the chains. Yeah. If it got to third down, it was going to be some sort of zone. Like they don't, like Brian Brown loves that stuff. Like they'll drop 8, they will. And I think they would love to drop 8 against McKenzie Milton. Like I think they would love that. He's not a rocket arm guy. He's Harris from Major League.
That's charitable.
Yeah.
The release is really quick. The actual ball speed is not good at all.
Right. He's decisive, and that comes from experience, and I would not take that away from him. But Jordan Travis is the one that's going to push the ball down the field. And Dylan Gabriel's and Matt Corral are gorgeous deep ball throwers, and I don't think McKenzie Milton can make one throw those two could make.
No, definitely not.
But I think McKenzie Milton knows exactly where to go with the ball. It's about being able to get it there, and I think that's sort of the role that Dice at Louisville's going to play.
Yeah, I mean that's how I would probably play it. This will be interesting.
I think it's gonna be close. I think it's going to be really close, just like the one 2 years ago. I think this game is going to be a lot like the 2019 game where Florida State had a big lead, 21-0. Louisville came back and actually had the lead and was driving to kind of put the game away. Bad interception, then Florida State scored, and then the game was kind of over after that. I think it's going to look a lot like that.
That would be.
You are more optimistic than I am, Mark. We'll see. We'll see.
I drove you guys just to sort of reverse the juju. So sports betting's legal in Indiana, not legal in Kentucky. It'll be legal in Kentucky in like the year 2500. But I drove across the river to Indiana. DraftKings advertises with us. I drove across the river to bet in Indiana, and I bet UCF and I bet the under, and then UCF Louisville won and the over hit. And I was like, fine.
Oh, I had Louisville in the over. Oh man, I was like, no,
so
I just
my money is what you're saying.
Basically, yes, but not at DraftKings because like the same with the state of Florida. Obviously, with all the lawsuits and stuff, it's going to be a little while.
Oh Lord,
yeah, that'd be nice if we could get.
Is anything illegal in Florida?
Like as far as sports betting,
vaccine mandates. That's it.
Yeah, seriously. Oh man, here come the 2-star reviews. Thanks, Ennis. Oh man. All right.
Okay, my mother and brothers are still down there, so it's not like I'm talking like I don't know what I'm talking about.
I feel like do you feel like you're more of a Louisville guy or are you more of a Florida guy still?
It's about 50-50 now. Like, I've been gone 20 years. I left in 2002. So it's down the middle. But I mean, I make frequent trips. My mother visits me 5 times a year. So I stay abreast. All my friends. I tell you what, one of the funniest things about beating UCF and beating them the way that I did, the way that Louisville did. Growing up, but you remember UCF. Like they didn't. 79 was the first year I think they played football at all, and for the vast majority of it, it was FCS, and they were never on TV. I mean, Dante Culpepper played on games.
I was about to say Dante Culpepper
plays in my buddy's golf league, by the way, in Fort Myers.
That's great.
Yeah.
So many of my friends from high school at Chamberlain in Tampa that went to USF texting me, they're like, "Thank God." Just people love the UCF was finally suffering for once. It was pretty great.
I live here in Orlando now, so it's like,
you don't have to say anything. I know they'll burn your house. It's fine.
Oh, though they're great. Totally deserve to be.
That's right.
A Power 5.
Not
team.
new money at all.
Yeah,
not
definitely not.
Sure.
No, very deserving. So you guys don't play Miami this year. Yeah. Are you going to beat Kentucky?
Oh God, don't do this to me.
That defense, Kentucky's defense is not good.
But just imagine, like Kentucky fans are UCF fans plus SEC for 55 years. Like you can't. No, I can't do that. I can't do that.
That's fair.
I'll have my identity stolen.
Mark, you got a prediction? Or are you dropping it tomorrow on the radio?
I think that's okay. I don't mind. I think Louisville's going to win, and I think it's going to look almost exactly like the UCF game. I think Louisville will win extremely closely. It'll be uncomfortable and mildly dissatisfying to everybody. But I think as long as they don't just help FSU win, I think they'll win something like 30-23 or 30-24 or something like that. Like, I think it'll be, what's the over-under on this game?
62.
I would go under.
Yeah, I would too. Like, the only thing that makes me not want to is the pace adjustment. Like, FSU does play fast when they get first downs, which if they don't get any first downs, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can have the intent to go fast, but then not go fast. But yeah, I also think it's probably an under game.
Yeah, I think Louisville will win outright. I would go under. Scott loves to just sort of hold on to the ball. I think that Milton is much less likely to be able to sort of take the top off than Jordan Travis would be able to, and I don't think Jordan Travis is going to play. So, but I think it's going to be down to the wire. Like, I don't think anybody gets to get comfortable in this one at all.
I think that's fair. You actually stole my score. So.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Yeah.
Great minds.
Ingram,
So
what do you got?
16 or some shit like that.
I mean, maybe I'm just a prisoner of the moment. I haven't heard a whole lot of positive information today. I thought going into this pod that it would be one of the few times where Bud was more optimistic than I am. I think Florida State loses by 13 points. I mean, I don't know that Florida State has the ability to be competitive on offense. I think the defense wears down over time, and maybe 36-23, something like that.
What's like? I'll rely on YouTube in this regard. I still remember 2018 and how much into the tank Louisville went after the Florida State game, and there was a very obvious turning against the coaches. I don't think Florida State has that, but I feel like this is going to kind of be the last stand. Like, I think Florida State knows, like, if they lose this game, it's like 2-10 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, where are they at psychologically?
You got Syracuse coming up, which helps. Wake Forest, I don't want to say was last stand, but when you lose at home to Jacksonville State, you need a bounce back, and you didn't get it last week. I don't know that you'll necessarily have a locker room turn against the coaches. I do think the fan base, I think they could get frustrated on Saturday, and you could hear it in a manner that you don't necessarily hear it from college fans all the time.
Yeah, I think that as far as I know, they are not having any issues, like personality-wise, behavior-wise, buy-in-wise, from any of the high schoolers that they took in Norvell's classes. There are definitely some guys who are from Willie's classes and from Jimbo's classes who they're like,
It would be nice if you could move on.
Well, but also, like, some of those dudes a couple of those guys are talented. So it'd be like, the option A is like, please get with the damn program.
Yeah.
Option B would be like, hey man, if we lose another game or two here, why don't we just go ahead and play some of these guys we signed? Because you're not going to be here by the time we actually get good.
Gotcha.
But like, I think the combo of the young guys that they've signed, and obviously, like, those guys talk to the recruits who are coming in. They seem to still be kind of with, and he's so new, so like, reasonably, I'd be surprised if you had like a massive team quit on. Now, some of the transfers, I don't know. We'll see. Some of those guys who aren't working out so well, hard to tell. They're not really like part. They haven't been in the program for a while. How do you know what they're going to do?
You don't have the opt-out thing like you had a year ago.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking otherwise UConn should just opt the hell out.
Oh my God.
Right.
God, they play Clemson this year, guys.
Oh God, I didn't think about that. UConn plays Clemson. That's gonna be tough. Yeah. I saw Bill Connolly had the worst rating on them from any team.
The sun is hot, bud.
Since 1912.
The sun is hot. Yeah, that'll be tough.
Yeah, that's like a World War I issue, right? Hey, maybe some guys will opt out and they'll come drink with us at Township Saturday at noon. That's right. It's the Nolecast listener appreciation event. Noles are 0-3, but the beers go down just the same. We're going to be hanging out at Township. Mark, are you coming down for the game?
I'm not. I'm anchoring things from back in the studio. So
you are missing a ridiculously nice weekend as far as weather. This is absolutely sundress season. It is going to be like 78 to 85 in Tallahassee. No rain predicted. Of course, it's Florida. Asterisk. Anyway, hit up a Township at noon. Ingram and I will be there in the little private beer garden area. It's going to be a blast, man.
I'm jealous. I would love that.
Yeah. So I guess we just await the injury report, right? If we see Scott and Smith in there, I think it's really game on. If not, I think FSU will move to 0-4. I think that's pretty much it. We'll probably knock out a couple listener questions for our Patreon here, I guess. Man, I really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, guys. And trust me, man, I know exactly how this feels. God, just hang in there.
Will do.
We'll have you on again next year. Always enjoy it, Mark.
I love you guys, man. Anytime.
All right, Mark. Take care, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, so now we'll go to a couple of our Patreon questions here as we fill it out. First, though, we do want to thank Legendary Home Loans, Legendary Team 844-FSU Loan. It's 844-FSU Loan. Always a great time when you give that number a call because you'll get a great rate, awesome customer service. Consistency of product. We're not really seeing great. I guess they are consistent this year. In fact, they lose every game, but not consistency as far as relative to the hopes. Consistency of product you get from Shannon and Chad at the Legendary Team is excellent. In fact, I've used them twice. Been extremely satisfied both times. 844-FSU Loan. Get your home loan or refi done today. What Patreon question you want to take here?
All right, man. So we've got 16, which is great. We can't get to 16 questions, particularly after when we have a guest as good as Mark and we do, 45 minutes with him. So we'll try to get to a couple here and do the best that we can to knock out some of these. Let me just start off with Austin and Jeff. They had two similar questions. Austin asked over under on 5 decommits from those currently committed to this class.
Ooh, okay. Let me scan this.
I personally think 5 is a rich number. I'd go a little bit below that. I would say that the general consensus of conversation that I hear, I don't know if celebrating is the right term, but look, we're all looking for something positive right now and to latch onto it, right? And I'm not just trying to be a rainy day asshole with how I am on this podcast, but I think we should wait until Halloween before we really start to take, credence that this class is sticking together or that it's not. I just think right now we're a little too early and we need to give this thing a little bit more time. A little bit worried about what I personally think is the best offensive lineman that you have committed, the kid out of IMG. That's going to be tough. We've known that for a while.
Yep.
Some of the other kids that we've profiled that would fit the typical description of those that you're going to have to battle with going into a year like this. I will say one thing is that both fans and I think recruits in general, for whatever reason, put a lot of emphasis on if a quarterback bails from the class. And I think you're pretty safe there. I mean, Duffy, you're pretty good as far as a competitive school situation, good relationship, certainly a very clearly defined path to being the starter in year one. I think that part of it you'll hold together and that may help to hold this class slightly better than you would historically when you perform at a level like this. But if you continue along this path, you're gonna decommits are coming, certainly.
I'm gonna go under very slightly, I think. This team just lost to Jacksonville State and it lost to Wake. And unless you get more offensive linemen playing this weekend than I think I think you'll lose to Louisville. Not impossible to beat Louisville, as we obviously just discussed with Mark. Your defensive line could dominate them. And maybe you actually hold on to some footballs and get some turnovers or something like that. It's not like Cunningham is a real precision passer, as Mark told us. Miami being as bad as they are really helps right now. Because I think if Miami was rocking, maybe you worry about losing Richardson and Daniel Lyons and those guys back to Miami. But here's the difference. FSU's kids knew that FSU wasn't going to be good this year. I don't think they thought they were going to be this bad, obviously. I don't think anybody did, including the staff. Although if you had told them, hey, if you lose Schrader, not coming back this year, Scott for multiple games, Smith for multiple games, you have to kick Lucas off the team, they'd be like, oh, God, we might win 2-3 ball games.
Yeah.
So
And the list of concerns may be broader than that even. So
Parchment's going to be a total bust as a receiver transfer. Mackenzie Milton is definitely like on the lower end of potential outcome ranges that you thought, blah, 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 blah. But Miami was telling kids they're going to be good this year for sure, right?
Yeah.
Like that, this was supposed to be the year. De'Aaron King came back. The tackle that transferred from Houston came back. A lot of guys came back to that team, and they will probably not miss a bowl. But the fact that I had to use the word probably there is concerning. I mean, they'll win this weekend because they get Central Connecticut State, I guess, and they'll go to 2-2. But I mean, after that, UVA, it's probably going to be an empty stadium, right? That's also an interesting short rest game. So Miami's got to get ready for that. Of course, UVA has to get ready for it too. At North Carolina, NC State, at Pitt, Georgia Tech, at FSU, Virginia Tech, at Duke. They'll probably win 6 or 7 games, you know? But I don't know, man. That's not a great, like, it's sort of how do you do relative expectations and where you are in your build or your rebuild. So I don't think they're quite as big of a threat for some kids now as I once did. So for that reason, I will go under very slightly. And I echo your concerns there on the kids that you mentioned that are concerns.
Yeah,
for sure.
Lee says Norvell was an offensive play caller at Memphis and was able to call good plays / games. Since coming to Florida State, that doesn't seem to be the case with very questionable calls, especially the last 2 weeks. We know the receivers suck, the quarterback situation isn't great, and the offensive line, ... Guessing Lee would rather not speak about it. I hear you, Lee. If Dillingham is making the calls, shouldn't Norvell step in and say, hold up, or something like that, instead of letting some of these questionable play calls happen? Or is he calling these plays in conjunction with Dillingham? I'm trying to figure out how he went from being a pretty good play caller at Memphis to the things we're seeing on the field. Should Norvell take over the play calling from here? So, but I'll certainly give you the opportunity to answer this. I've been critical of Dillingham, some of the things that he said in the press conference and stuff like this, but you've got a decently talented defensive roster. What you've got on the offensive side of the ball is really poor. And unfortunately, with the injuries that you've had and the concentrated injuries that you've had at the offensive line, I'm going to have a real hard time being critical of play calls. Everything has to be if you're a baseball pitcher, everything has to be junk. Every pitch is junk. You have to try to miskey. You have to try to fool people. Even on a pass play with Travis, you have to draw up some kind of one read play. Now, sometimes that's a one read that takes a second to develop. You're probably going to get sacked. Everything has to be hoping that you catch a defense in a certain look. It's just so banged up front. And I'm worried that that's actually going in the wrong direction here. That I'm going to have a real hard time being critical of play call / play callers.
You know, if you could pass protect it, right, you could get creative and make up for some of your receiver problems. You know, or if you had guys who could win one-on-one and win quickly, you could make up for some of your pass protection problems. Or if you had a quarterback who could make very difficult throws. But when scheming up one-on-ones is a losing strategy, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be intentionally negative here. I'm just trying to be real about this. What did Dillingham tell us? What did Rillingham tell us? Hey, one-on-ones are losing plays for us. Normally, one-on-ones are plays that we are trying to scheme up. We want to get one-on-ones for our best playmakers. Now they are losing plays. I can't just scheme up one-on-nones every play. Like, I'm not going to fool defenses that often. I have a really hard time accepting the idea. And I'm not saying Lee's asking a question in bad faith. I don't think he is. We can all nitpick individual calls, right? I mean, this team still found a way to score, 38 points against Notre Dame when they had probably their healthiest offensive line of the year. Even though Maurice was banged up for that. And they had some drives last week. They outgained Wake on a per play basis. I think they're going total blood from a turnip here. I don't expect a whole lot of improvement on offense. In fact, I agree with you. I think it could get worse. We'll see.
Let's see. Ebo asked, this past season, we saw the staff take 12 transfers with an emphasis on the defensive side and specifically defensive backs. We most likely won't see the team go for 12 again. Other than O-line, will there be an emphasis on another position? He asked, potentially linebackers.
Well, it's possible, right? With the new rule, I'm sure you saw this, but it looks like it's going to get passed.
Mm-hmm.
And we should probably talk about this during the bye week, because I think it's an interesting topic as it relates to FSU. But basically, if you take 25 high schoolers, for every kid that transfers out, you can take an additional scholarship for a transfer up to 7. So you actually could take 32 new players in if you have room for them in your 85, of course. But like they could take 25 high schoolers and then have, like Lucas will be a transfer. So that that'll count for 1. I'm sure they'll have a couple more guys who count. So I would probably go take a linebacker. I would try to take another receiver. I think you hope that your tight end room looks better by next year with some of the guys you just signed. I would go get another offensive lineman just in case. Although, look, Darius isn't going pro early this year, right? Robert Scott still has to stick around for another year. You hope that Schrader gets back from the rehab and looking good. They like Maurice Smith as a player if he could just ever, stay healthy. Ira Henry's not going to work out, in my opinion. Can you get one of Lloyd Willis or Rod Orr to become a decent backup tackle next year? This has always been kind of the plan. Go back to what we said on signing day, right? Probably a third year in the program starting for Rod Orr. Can Willis start as like a redshirt junior, redshirt senior type guy? Hoping to get 2 good years out of him later in his career, best case scenario. Can one of those guys develop just 1 year ahead of schedule? But I would still probably try to go get another offensive lineman if I was them. Maybe you want an interior guy. I don't think you go nuts at DB. You have some young DBs that you like quite a bit. I know they like Cooper and Brown a whole lot. You still have a decent number of these DBs on the roster here next year if they decide to kind of, fully commit.
If you found a good fit at safety, you'd take him, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. I think so. Yeah, I don't think there's one position that stands out where you have to go get a million guys. I would try to go take another receiver.
Dominic says, let's have a little fun here. If you had to go out and pick a top defensive coordinator, who would you pick? I think Norvell's too young and early into his coaching career to go out and get a big dog offensive coordinator, so I won't even ask. If Norvell will resume play calling duties. He says he looks forward to meeting us at Township, and go Noles. So Dominic, certainly appreciate your support, and we look forward to meeting you and any Patreon and any listener out there. So again, we'll remind you, noon at Township. I think we'll be there from probably about noon to 2:30, 2:45 or so. Yeah. So hope to meet as many of y'all as possible, and look forward to fantastic weather, and the patio on Township's an exceptional place. So defensive coordinator. We'll have time to talk about this, certainly. There's some names out there.
You think you think we'll be having this conversation?
Potentially. Well, I just mean like this will play itself out, I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is not going to happen next Tuesday. Well, depends on what happens this weekend. But yeah, I do think you'll see some turnover on the defensive side of the staff, if nothing else. And maybe during the bye week we can get you a 5-person defense coordinator hot board or something silly like that. That is a good time to do something like that, because it may be a direction that you're headed in.
Look, the obvious one that I think you would go kick the tires on, I don't know that he would say yes. I would probably not say yes, is Dan Lanning at Georgia, right? He's Georgia's DC. That's always going to be Kirby's defense. So the argument basically goes, like, if you want to step out of that spotlight and run your own defense, of course, you're also giving up Georgia's players, which if I'm Dan Lanning, I'm not taking the FSU job. I
think he's also probably going to get offered a pretty quality head coaching job.
I agree.
It's going to be tough. I go offer to pay him $3 million a year from Florida State. I would do silly stuff. And I know this is a school that can't necessarily afford that, but can't really afford to be firing your head coach every 2 to 3 years either. So let's spend the money in the one direction, or one of the few places in college athletics where I think it's actually warranted and you're relatively guaranteed somewhat return. And let's back the Brinks truck up for defense coordinator, please. Let's see. Justin says, one of the reasons I love your show is its intellectual honesty, assuming that dedicated fans want cleared-eye analysis over hype. As you've said many times, last year was year 0. On the Wake Forest episode, you bluntly stated that Norvell will need 4 to 5 years. I agree. I honestly think that college football fans need instant gratification, and the financial pressure on programs to perform has led to many hasty firings and knee-jerk reactions. 1, is there room in college football for growth anymore, or have we shrunk to a 2 to 3 season timeline? 2, does the Nole fan base have the patience to wait for the results? And 3, based on what we're seeing, do you believe that the program is on the right track to be a top 10 team in 4 years?
So, all right, let's go ahead and take these one by one. In 4 years. I think my answer here is going to be kind of positive. Is there room in college football for growth anymore? Or have we shrunk to a 2-3 year timeline? We may have momentarily shrunk. I do think the early signing period is going to cause some ADs to say, wait a second, is it really a good idea to fire a guy after just 2 years? Absent like pretty wild stuff going on behind the scenes, no real evidence that he's going to be able to turn things around due to rampant disorganization or lack of leadership and whatnot. No. And FSU may be one of those cautionary tales, right? Look what happened to them. They nuked their roster as a known side effect of their choice. And it was a choice. They made the choice. They got to live with the consequences. But I think with FSU, the money situation kind of dictates that they almost have to be patient. So they might have actually sort of penned themselves in to an outcome that I think is preferable, if that makes sense. Number 2.
Does the Nole fan base have the patience to wait for results?
I mean, does it have a choice? They can bitch and moan on Twitter all they want, but the folks who have 20,000 tweets but don't give $20,000 in the end don't really matter to the decision makers. It's just noise.
I'll reiterate what I said in the Instant Reaction podcast. I think the fan base was in a pretty good place as far as what to expect. Those reasonable expectations go out the window when you lose to Jacksonville State. I mean, I think this fan base was ready to climb. I mentioned that one of the people that I value their opinion the most said, this team may well win 4 games. Yeah, it may. Now it may win 2 games. That's even in a year in which you don't expect much, you probably under-delivered. That's something that I think fan base is going to have a hard time with over time. So
that's why I think you'll have a change of defense coordinator at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's
hard to outrun that.
You've got to do, yeah, exactly. You have to do something, and at some point, a fan base is going to want to see some change. All right, so final question. Or no, we still got part 3. Sorry. Based on what you're seeing, do you believe the program is on the right track to be a top 10 team in 4 years? I mean, obviously, we haven't seen a whole lot of good things recently. If you can keep this recruiting class together, let's say top 20 program, okay? If you can keep this recruiting class together, relatively speaking, if you keep Hunter, if you keep McCall, at this point, I've been pretty optimistic about recruiting for about 4 or 5 months now. I don't think you're going to get Kelly. I don't think you're going to get some of these fringe guys that maybe 3 weeks ago you thought you had a pretty good chance of getting. You keep what you have. Maybe you get lucky with a kid like Coleman, whereas, again, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have told you were in pretty good shape with him, really good shape with him. You sign a top 15, top 20 class, and you just work off of that. And if you can follow that up with another top 15, top 10 class, then yeah, I'd say, look, you're on the track to be above average. But but we'll have to see how much what the retention rate in this class looks like, and then I can probably give a little bit better answer to that question.
I also think that you have it's not impossible that they beat Louisville. I don't think they're going to beat Louisville, but it's not crazy to me to think they could. Louisville's not a dominant team. They got blown out by Ole Miss. They played a very close game with a huge emotional crowd at home, obviously, against UCF. So anything is possible there. And I hate that anything is possible as a reason for hope. But it is a winnable game. I don't think they'll win unless some more guys play than you and I expect, based on what you've heard. But I don't think it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Then they have Syracuse. They're not going to beat North Carolina. North Carolina will carve them up. I think they should beat UMass. Best case scenario, you're what? 3-4 at that point. That's best case. Unlikely to happen, but it's not insane to think it could happen. Like I actually think they have about, I don't know. What percentage chance would you say that they make a bowl
this year?
Yeah.
5%.
Well, damn.
And that may be optimistic.
No. You and I had the exact same percentage.
Yeah. Look,
I ran some
I'm not
numbers on it this morning.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be too negative.
4.8.
Maybe I just talked to a guy that was having a horrible day, right? I don't know that they're healthy enough to win any game other than UMass, to be perfectly honest with you. Maybe Syracuse, you get the Syracuse game. But with my concerns along the offensive line and some other position groups, you're going to struggle for anything this year. And it sucks, to an extent. I don't believe in cursed or anything like that, but you've had concentrated
Alex
injuries.
Atkins might believe in cursed right now.
Alex Atkins is contacting a Catholic priest to walk through the stadium and send out whatever demon spirits are flying around. Yeah. Absolutely. And he's, calling his friend's sister, this little bohemian to come burn sage or whatever goes on. I mean, you've got to do something because you've got some bad juju that's hung over this program for a couple years. But, I don't remember seeing an area of concentrated injuries this bad in a long, long time. And when it's up front, and you have some of the other limitations that you have, I just have a hard time seeing you win a whole lot of football games right now. So again, maybe I'm being prisoner of the moment. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe somebody was just trying to sandbag. We'll see. But I'm in a little bit of a dark place right now with what Florida State's going to look like for the rest of the year.
I don't disagree with you. I think like the range of outcomes, I'm very confident they're going to win at least one game, right? And I feel like the chance they win out is extremely small, obviously, right? I do think there's about a 5% chance that they make a bowl. So if you gave me like 100-1, I would obviously take that, because that's a lot better than 5%. Miami looks bad. Now you do too. You look worse than Miami. Let's be clear on this. Miami didn't go out there and lose to an FCS team. We don't really know how Boston College is going to look, and we don't know how healthy you're going to be in that game. Like, it's entirely possible that you get Robert Scott and you get Marie Smith back for that game. Be nice. Hell, maybe you get him back this weekend. We'll see. BC's not getting their quarterback back this year, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Their defense, I put this poll on Twitter, Dan, if you saw this or not. Who's the best quarterback BC's faced? Is it the Colgate QB? Is it Temple's backup? Or is it UMass's backup? Because that's literally who they faced. And Boston College is, even with that, is 108th in passing explosiveness allowed. Like, they got real problems on defense. Like, BC's defense might be worse than FSU's offense. Straight up.
Yeah.
That, unless that kid comes back for them, that's a winnable game, unless your offense just remains an injured wreck. NC State at home, I don't like your chances. At Clemson, I don't like your chances. At Florida, I didn't like your chances in the preseason. But I guess my point here, this is a very long point, so apologies. and we're going on pretty long tonight, is that we really thought you had to win your games early in the season. Now, through nothing you've done, it's entirely opponents looking worse, either through poor play, injury, or both. You actually have more winnable games on the back half of the schedule than you thought you did.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you told me, hey, FSU starts 0-3, like, oh well, they are like they're screwed. But then some of these other teams look pretty bad, so we'll see how that works out.
Absolutely. Want to remind you all again to come out, see us at Township on Saturday at noon. Also come out, and if you're a person of a business owner or somebody that directly reports to one, our real good friend Matt Lewis will be out there as well. So if you need to speak to one Matt Lewis, and whether you're in Tallahassee or not, you can certainly always give him a call at 844-247-4100 or email him knowles@congruityhr.com. Very much look forward to spending some time with Matt. And again, if you're at Township and you want to discuss what Congruity can do for your business, he'll be there. And if you're not, shoot him an email. It's certainly worth your time and something we'd encourage all of our listeners to do.
All right, buddy. I will see you Saturday.
Yeah, look forward to it. We'll see how it goes. This has been an interesting podcast.
Hey.
Always great to have our old friend Mark Ennis join us. It's hilarious. Before we started recording, I was telling Mark the first sports podcast I ever did, I believe, was with Mark in maybe 2008, 2009 or so. And obviously you and Mark have known each other for a long time. So great to have a guest of that quality. Thank him for his time. And thank you, the listener, for your time. And we'll have an instant reaction for you on Saturday. And we'll be back again next week to preview that's a pretty winnable game. So that should be fun.